Readers and listeners have mixed feelings about authors narrating their own books, and for good reason. An audiobook is not simply a recording of someone reading their book aloud. It is a performance and an art form in its own right. Which is why today I want to talk about how I narrated and published my own audiobook. When I decided to produce my own audiobook, I was nervous because I knew I wanted a high-quality product, and I knew that was going to take some time to do correctly. However, I was able to figure it out by practicing narration and learning what I needed to know to edit and master my audiobook. That's what I'm going to share with you today. And if you hang on until the end of this video, I'll tell you how you can get a free timeline of a book, which will help you figure out when in your book's production you should even be worrying about your audiobook. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. Let's start with Learn How to Narrate. The first thing I did when I decided to try and narrate my own audiobook was to take 2 4-week narration courses. I did this through Colorado Free University, which is where I teach creative writing courses. My goal wasn't just to learn how to narrate an audiobook, it was also to learn if this was even something that I could do and really wanted to spend my time and energy on. Through those courses, I learned things like how to hint at character voices instead of doing a full-on voice, because a full voice isn't right for every book. I learned how to prepare my script for narration, breathing exercises, all sorts of things. Here's a tip: stand up when you're doing it. There's a reason singers stand. It's because it opens up your diaphragm. After those 4-week classes, I felt like I did still want to narrate my own audiobook, and I felt like I was on my way to producing a quality audiobook. You should do something similar if you're thinking about doing this. Give yourself a trial of sorts. I recommend picking your most soundproofed room in your house and reading a 15-minute section from your book. Narrate it as if it's an audiobook. Then go back and listen to it, see what you think. Also, consider sharing a bit of that recording with someone in your life who listens to audiobooks. There is a certain style of narration that most audiobook listeners are looking for. We want to make sure we are fitting into that somehow. So, here are some audiobook narration tips I picked up from my classes. Practice reading out loud. Mark words or phrases you want to emphasize or say differently. For example, I would write whisper before the dialogue that needed to be whispered. Look up pronunciations and write them down or bookmark that webpage. I wrote in my book. Stand in the same place at the same distance from your microphone every time you record. This is just standard recording practice. Mark the volume spot on your microphone so you're consistent. Record at the same time every day because your voice will sound different at different times of day. Learn your speech patterns and vary them. You don't always want to end a sentence with the same cadence or tone. For example, you don't always want to end down or up. If you don't have any narrating experience, I highly recommend you get some before diving into a full audiobook. It takes a lot of time and energy. You don't want to have to redo it. Classes worked for me, and with everything online now, they're even more accessible. Next, you need quality equipment. The first thing I knew I needed to invest in was a different type of microphone. I use a lavalier one right here when I record these videos. That's good enough for video, but it's not good enough for something like a podcast or an audiobook. So I got the Fifine USB microphone. That is this one right here. It just plugs into your computer and it works with most audio softwares. I also got this circular thing. It's a pop filter. It helps suppress certain sounds that we make when we speak so it doesn't make it onto the audio file, like popping P's, clicking, S's, things like that. So this is what I picked. It is a mid-range microphone. It's not the best one out there, but it was good enough for what I needed. Next, I bought a mid-range audio editing software. I went with Reaper, which was about $60 when I purchased it. I then watched Booth Junkie's YouTube videos, I'll link to that below, to help me set it up for audiobooks. Most of these software programs are going to do a lot more than you need it to, so you may want to do what I did, which is make all that other stuff go away, so all you see on the screen is what you need. I also used Booth Junkie's videos to help me edit and master. You can always use the free audiobook program Audacity. A lot of people do that. I didn't like certain features. I am used to having other features when I edit these videos and do other video editing. So I knew that I needed those other features and that I wanted them, so I was willing to pay for that. When it comes to your audiobook software, remember that this is a more complicated program. It's not simple. It's going to take a little bit of time to learn how to use it, especially if you have no film or recording experience. Next, you need to find a soundproof space. A lot of people use a closet for their home recording studios. It works really well. Make sure you fill it with some sort of fabric, clothing, material that's going to absorb sound and keep it from echoing and bouncing around. I used my walk-in closet. This is a great option, especially if you have a bit of a clothing addiction like I do. That means I really didn't have to fill it with more stuff. I just had to cover my door and dresser with a comforter. In addition to those, you are going to need a computer that is powerful enough to run your editing software. Most computers today can do that. Just double check if you have an older version of a computer that it is compatible with the newer softwares. Next, you need to record your audiobook. Once I was practiced and all set up, I set about recording my audiobook. I would record every afternoon, and I usually worked on my audiobook for anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day. I recorded in the afternoon to keep it consistent the same time of day. I did not record for 3 hours straight. What I did was I would record 1 to 2 of the short stories in my book. That way my voice was not getting all cracky, it wasn't getting tired by the end. And then for that rest of that audiobook time, I would edit those sections that I just recorded. Also, when you are recording your audiobook, make sure you break it into small audiobook files. Most places do not want one ginormous audio file. They want you to break it down. You can break it down by short story like I did, by chapter, by parts, whatever you choose. I like to think of an audiobook like a music album, where each individual section, the chapter, the story, however you break it down, is like a song on an album. They're in different audio files, but they all go together. When I recorded the audiobook version of When Magic Calls, I used the proof copy of my physical book. This did 2 things for me. It meant that I was comfortable writing in that book because no one else is ever going to see it, and it gave me another opportunity to do a proofread. We read differently on the screen versus on a paper copy, so I was kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. On my proof copy, I spelled out pronunciations, names. I did those little notes to myself on where I needed to whisper or something like that. I also wrote out the ends of sentences, so I didn't have to turn the page in the middle of a sentence. Your microphone will be powerful enough to pick up the sound of that page turn, so you are going to have to edit that out. The next time I record an audiobook, I plan on looking into a teleprompter software that I can upload my ebook into. This will scroll continuously, so I don't have to pause or turn the page or edit out anything like that. It's going to take a little bit of practice for me to use that, so if you're going to use that, be prepared to practice too. While you're recording, don't be afraid to edit. If you mess up, cut that out, say it over again so that you don't have to do it later. It's going to be faster that way. Also have plenty of water beside you to keep your vocal cords lubricated. And make sure you warm up. Don't just start reading and recording. What I liked to do was I would reread the last paragraph from the previous day's recording as a way to warm up my voice and get back into the story. Those are my tips for the actual recording of the audiobook. Next, I want to talk about editing and mastering an audiobook. The editing portion is fairly simple. You just want to make it sound smooth, cut out any extra noises or things like that, as long as you have a quality microphone and a quality recording space. It's going to save you a lot of headache in the editing phase. You're going to be listening for mistakes, correcting those, just any weird noises that you picked up. The mastering part is what I found trickier. There are specific audiobook specifications of the decibel range, how loud and how soft it can be, different things like that you'll want to look up. I recommend looking at Amazon specifications because in my experience they were the strictest, which meant if I could meet those, I met the specifications everywhere else. You want to meet those specifications, otherwise these retailers will not carry your audiobook. When you upload your audiobook, it is run through a program that double checks these things, and it will be rejected if you don't meet them. I had a little trouble with one specific specification. I just couldn't get the program to do what I needed it to. So I ended up calling my brother, who is the music producer and artist Man Cub. He knows all about audio software. He walked me through a lot of these things so that I understood not only what I needed to do, but why. I'm a why person. If I understand the why, I am much more willing to do something than if you just tell me to do it. So that was helpful for me, and I recommend if you need help, ask. Look up tutorials, reach out to someone in your life who can help you with this. The Booth Junkie YouTuber that I mentioned earlier also helped me with this because a lot of his videos that walk you through how to set up some of these specifications told you why you were doing it, what it was doing for the sound quality, and I just find that really helpful. My biggest tip for when you are in the editing and mastering phase is to be patient. Remember, there's a learning curve happening here. This is your first time using this software. Give yourself some grace. Next, I want to share an editor, author, and narrator's final tips. You should put just as much time and effort into producing a quality audiobook as you did producing a quality print book and a quality ebook. Audiobook listeners expect that, and they will let you know if you did not meet those expectations. So make sure you put in that time and effort. Also, remember how long it took you to become a great writer, to produce your book. It's going to take a bit of time to produce a good audiobook as well. I was a little bit lucky I could jump the gun because I do have experience on film and recording that way, so I have a little bit of audio experience. Also remember that it is not a one-to-one ratio. So for each hour of an audiobook, it does not take you an hour to create that. For your first book, it's going to take 2 to 5 hours. For each recorded hour that a listener gets to listen to, it's going to take you 2 to 5 hours to produce. A big part of that is the learning curve. It might take you an hour and a half to record an hour, but it's going to take you 3.5 hours to figure out how to edit and master it. So be prepared for that learning curve. Mine probably took me 3.5 to 4 hours per finished hour. That's not including the classes I took and that stuff. That's just the recording, the editing and mastering, and then the uploading. So I expect this to be faster for my next audiobooks because I have already learned how to do these things, but we'll see. Maybe it won't be quite yet. It might take you a few times before you get fast at it too. So that's how I narrated my audiobook, and those are the tips I have for you. Overall, you're not going to know if you really want to do this until you try it, so I recommend trying it out before you invest too much into it. And if you have done an audiobook, what's your top tip for someone thinking about narrating their own? Share it in the comments below. And for more videos on audiobook production and other aspects of editing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and author. To find out more about me, you can go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. That is where you will find that free timeline of a book, which will help you figure out when you should even be thinking about your audiobook in the production of your whole book. And if you want to check out my audiobook, go to caitlinburvey.com. That's where you will find When Magic Calls in all 3 forms. You can also find it at most audiobook retailers, but if you go to my website, you'll be able to see my future audiobook projects too. And now it's your turn to practice narrating, to get quality equipment, and to learn how to edit and master correctly so you can produce an amazing audiobook and ignite your ink.